Alright guys, so finally going to dive into the long range build or just the shooting build in general. So let's kind of get started. So essentially what we are going to do in this video, we're going to go over the abilities that you should be using, and then we're just trying to see what kind of peak performance we can get from this build. So base set, I'm just going to be using a full set of the new Gundam FF. It honestly does not really matter what set you're using, because essentially most of the abilities are more or less going to be overlapping from various parts, so don't really matter. The primary thing about a range build, honestly, is I consider it being a little bit complicated because there are many types of range build that you can actually play from. I think it hugely depends on what kind of EX skills and what kind of OP skills that you are planning to use. So it definitely varies depending on the abilities that you should be equipping. So I think the main thing we should be targeting for a range build is probably going to be the head part, namely going to be the reaction speed, both left and right range weapon, the long range weapon, and then your melee weapon, and then a shield. So those are going to be the component that more or less could affect how your long range or your shooting based build can perform. So headpiece, why am I talking about the headpiece? Because of this little spec over here, the reaction speed. People have been testing out that depending on how many percentage you guys have for your range build, and specifically for the beam blast build, your damage output actually decrease the higher your reaction speed goes, because you are essentially pumping out so fast of your beam output, like the beam damage, that it essentially is not fully taking it in. So if we were to reduce the speed, is actually better in the long run, which will probably demonstrate towards the very end, but that's something we can probably fix via the ability cartridge that we will do in later on. The body pretty much the same thing. I think I have been using constantly, you know, majority of everything that you guys have been seeing. Yeah, I use it in pretty much all the builds. The right arm is roughly following, and then the right arm pretty much the same thing as well. I think they're just in different orders. Yeah, they're just in different order, but they are essentially the same. Leg piece as well, they are pretty much the same. I don't think I changed out anything either. Back part, more or less the same. Maybe there are a few things that I changed out from here and there depending on my liking, but other than that, they are pretty much the main stable. And then we get to the right weapon and then the left range weapon. So I'm gonna have to do a quick damage performance first before we even upgrade anything, because I want to see where we at prior to upgrading, and then after upgrading how much difference we're looking at. So I will touch on this in just a little bit. As far as the range or the melee weapon or the close range weapon, honestly I would prefer using just a melee module in my personal opinions, because since it's going to be both left and right, you can mitigate a lot of headaches by, you know, doing less upgrading. So for this one, essentially they are going to get double when it's going to be on battle, because I only using one part, but technically speaking you need two of the left and right, but it's just on here it's not double, so any percentage that I have is going to get double. So this is definitely not going to be the final number that we're looking at, but for just the damage testing prior to upgrading, we will be using the following. None of these are actually boosting, let's say, any range damage anyway, so it does not really matter. And then the shield actually is a fairly important component as well, because of these three ability targeting the long range gauge recovery speeds, the long range gauge cost, and then the long range gauge capacity. So I'm going to quickly show you guys a comparison between having these three versus not having them. So the other shield that I actually am going to be equipping is actually going to be one of the J Doggo over here. So this one, we don't have those three abilities, so you guys can probably see right now there are going to be a slight difference. So having those three abilities actually does help out in the long run, so that's why for a shield is actually important right there as well. And other than that, EX skill wise that we are going to be trying out are going to be following. So these two are obviously not with the new Gundam, but I am going to be tossing on just for the damage reference. And then burst action, we are using the full burst from the Justice backpack just for the gauging. And then for the OP skills, we are using the following: the missiles, the beam cannon for the gauging as well. So let's actually hop into the testing, and then we will see what kind of damage we are looking at the beginning prior to any upgrading. Alright, so we are here. So I'm gonna start things up by using the EX skill. So let's actually start out with the long spin funnel shots. So let's gonna see how much damage we're looking at. 97k, that's actually pretty good. Alright, that's not bad. And then let's actually use the H2 double bullets EX. So that's gonna be my fourth button over here. 87 is, or 97 is as well, so pretty consistent. And then I'm gonna let the hit count, okay, the hit count disappear ready. And then this one is the Infinite Justice back EX skill, so 107k, that's good. And then moving on to the OP, we have just the missile, and this one we did, I think one of the shot was a 25k and then a 3k, and then the beam cannon, let's see. So the beam cannon is a constant shot. I think there are a few shots that you can do. So 44k and 4k per shot essentially. So we have that. And then range weapon. So we have the left hand first. Left hand is going to be spitting out 18k, 1817 right there. 3 shot per right there. And then the whole attack is going to be 9k. And then we can probably test out the long range as well. So this one is going to be holding it down, and it's going to be spitting out 5k as well. So alright, so we got our initial base number and dial in, and then oh, lastly, right, we have this, the burst action officer, right? So let's see what we can do. We did 330k. Alright, yep, now we definitely got our number dial in, and then we are gonna go through the upgrading now. Alright, so we are at the synthesizing part now. So I have selected numerous part that I want to fuse in, and then just gonna see what kind of option we have. So my biggest fear when I'm looking at a shooting based build is the amount of option that we have available for. So this is essentially majority of the abilities that you can actually mix and match and make it into a fairly good build. So how are we actually going to tackle this? Like, what do we actually need? Well, first of all, I'm going to need something that will allow me to actually improve my range weapon stats. So I'm looking for one that actually would give me what is this one? This one is a right left range or right long range weapon. So I'm looking for something that gives me that. So it would be something to this nature, but it would say right long range rifle or something like that. So I'm gonna have to scavenger in here and see what we'll have. So I think now that you kind of understand what I'm looking at, so I am going to actually find them, and then at the end I am going to show you guys why I'm picking certain ability, and then go to the whole explaining process. Alright, so it took me a minute to actually want to filter what I really want, and this is what we came up with actually. We have the attack power for right rifle because this is on the right and it's a beam rifle, and then we have beam blast. So these are effectively going to be for the EX cube, so you will probably see maybe like a good 1 to 2% increase. And then we have the what is this one, the right long range weapon. So yep, we got that right there. We have the long range EX, long range OP, and then we have the long range gauge cost long range weapon down by 3%. So this is essentially whenever we are using the gauge, is gonna cost lower to actually fire per shot. So essentially that is gonna help our DPS in general, because if we are lowering the cost, that will allow us to hit more, right? And they also want to increase the capacity as well. And this one is the extended activation for the Hyper Trans EX. So that is essentially like your Trans Am, Hyper Mode, Alice, whatever you name it. So any of the like the awakening, those are gonna get extended as well. Honestly, when I take a look at this list, there are still a lot that are actually fairly good to use, and I'm just sad because range weapon in general, they have a cost to it, they have a gauge to it, If they don't, I would honestly want to use a lot more in here, but because of the fact that we are constrained by what we have to use, or because of what it is, so there are some actually in here. I'll move to the melee weapon, because melee weapon I don't need it to hit as hard as I would for a melee build. So things like increasing EX skill gauge, or things that talks about reducing cooldown on the OP, for example, I'm gonna put everything onto my melee weapon, and they're gonna do the job to provide the, I guess, the other tangible stuff that we want, while for the actual main meat, like our both the left and right long range weapon, they are going to be essentially the mega focusing on power and all that fun stuff. So I am going to get this one ready, and then we are also going to be doing the same thing for the left side as well. But left side, you guys do already know my train dot, so I'm not going to go through the whole process of you guys watching me do it. I'm just going to complete it, and then we will see the results. And I just want to quickly touch upon something. Because of the build that we are using as an example, there are a lot of weaponry that revolves around the beam blast, so that's why when I'm picking abilities, I want to target that one instead. But when we do take a look at the other abilities, we have attack power for guided missile EX. So essentially, range build, there are different options that you can use depending on your playstyle. One is specifically for, you can say, ballistic, your projectile that revolves around missile, where this one is actually going to be very much beneficial rather than using the beam blast. So that's why when you guys are building this, you might probably want to build a different version of nearly the same thing, while changing out some of the more fundamental things. Like instead of using like the beam blast, for example, you might focus on the guided missile, for example. So that is like why it is a little bit complicated. And I think other than that, like, oh, we have this one as our barrage OP, right? That's obviously not any of the weapon that we're using, so it honestly really depends on what your niche is for a range build. But that's also that's pretty much what I want to add, so that's why I picked those ability that we need. So specifically is for this build, and presumably any build in the near future, if it relays on the beam blast, we can take advantage of that. The left long range weapon, and I pretty much have the similar stuff. We have the long range EX, long range weapon, and beam blast, long range weapon, and then long range OP. And then for this one specifically, when we went for a double gauge cost down for the long range rifle and then the long range weapon, so pretty good right there. Honestly, I am running out of the lower level part, so you guys can see the stat aren't really as impressive than they would be. So most of them could obviously go up to level 30, while some of them are just under the 20 level. So I'm just gonna leave it as it is. We will definitely still see the improvement that we need to, so I am just gonna proceed with this one. And you can see we did bump up in terms of the attack power, so that's good to see. And for the melee weapon, I went for the following abilities. So you guys can see this is definitely a lot more different than what I would normally have for, if this is for the actual close range build. I am still using the melee level for this one because, you know, if anything, I could still use a melee weapon to finish off the enemy. So we do have that. We have skill cooldown for the OP. So this is going to be for general. So this is not going to be specific to, let's say, my range EX or the range OP or the close range OP. So this is going to be free for all. So that's good. Cancel EX. You guys already know, if we cancel into something and then we pop the EX Q, it's going to get higher damage. So we will definitely test it out. Cancel combo, that also works in reverse as well, so that's good. EX skill gauge increase when part lost, so obviously going to be important. And then when enemy defeated, so that's good. And also for part loss as well. And lastly, the extended activation for those transams, your hyper mode and all that. So that's gonna be it for melee. And then I think now we are ready to hop into the testing ground again, and we'll see how much of an improvement we will have. Alright, so we are back again, so let's try out this first. And 115, so I think initially we were at 97k, so obviously an improvement already. So I'm just gonna wait for this to expire. 128, that's good, that's what we love to see. And then for the dots, cannon, come on. Okay, 115 as well. So yeah, definitely an improvement on that. So we'll take it. And then on to DOP. Let's see. Yeah, 27. It used to be 25, now 27. And then the cannon is roughly about, like, the smaller number is roughly about the same, so not big of a difference right there. This one went up by only 200. And then in total we went up by 3,000, so that's good. And then we have the, oops, I forgot to change it back. Okay, the charge attack went from 9k to 10k, that's good. Single shot went from 1800 to 2000, so that's an improvement. And then this one actually went up by tad as well. I don't think, yeah, we can't really break the 6k yet, but it's still an improvement. And then lastly we have the awakening. We have the full burst or the full blast. Let's see. I don't think it's gonna be the biggest improvement overall. Almost at 400k. That's pretty impressive. I'll take that. And granted, we don't have any like the actual awakening, so we can obviously use it up by just a tad. And then I want to try out the cancel combo actually. So I'm gonna be doing this. Okay, so let me try and reset this real quick. Yeah, I'm gonna wait for the gauge to expire. Gonna do this, and then yeah, I think it went up by a lot. I think we were doing 12.8k per shot, and then we went up by, yeah, we went up to 15k. So you guys can see how devastating when you are canceling into something with those cancel EX and cancel combo. So it's actually pretty crazy. Yep, this one as well went up a lot. Try this one as well. Yep. And granted, we have the hit bonus up, but you guys can see it gets really crazier. So I'm gonna try the same thing with the full burst as well, and activate that. And then let's actually target the enemy. So we can just do this. Yeah, easily breaking 400k when we did that. So there you guys have it. It's pretty broken, but I do want to try one last thing. I'm gonna reduce our reaction speed, so we are gonna drop it intentionally down to like maybe 100 to see if we'll actually see any improvement. So I'm gonna be right back. I am gonna go play around with the ability cartridge, and then we'll see some magic. So I went ahead and play around with the ability cartridge. So this is what we end up with. So I just want to equip everything on so we can just have this section done as well. So this the reaction speed reduction, we have how many percent now? We are down by 17%, because this effectively going to allow our awakening, the burst attack, to just do a lot more damage rather than the overall build itself. So as far as the other aspect of things, like these are gonna get slightly improved, like their gauge and whatnot. Yeah, that's pretty darn good if you ask me right there. But we are gonna test out the G awakening. We're gonna choose the burst mode. I'm just trying to see how much damage we're doing, and I don't think it's gonna overall, like the other aspect of things is not going to contribute like the biggest difference, so that's why I don't mind including it right now. But let's try this real quick. How much more are we doing? 442. That's a huge improvement, man. I don't know, like if we did not have that reduced by any amount, we're stuck behind that, was it 330 now or something like that? So that was definitely needed. So I think the other things, they are roughly about the same. No, they actually got improved as well. So I guess there you guys have it. So this is after the ability cartridge as well. So definitely an improvement, right? No, it did not. I think we still have the hit bonus on, that's why. But there you guys have it. So that is the ability after we reduce the reaction speed. Definitely a huge improvement for this right here specifically. So I think for a range build, this is obviously pretty important, because this may be kind of like a finishing blow. So having that extra tad of damage would definitely be great. But other than that, that is going to be it for me, and I'll be catching you guys on the next one.